Okay, so we have some triangles here, and we have learned that there's a special relationship between the angles of a triangle. All the interior angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. We went over that in one of our videos earlier. So once we know the measure of some angles, we can use those measures to help us find missing angles. So in this case, let's look at this example. Here we have two measures, and we don't know this measure. So we're going to call that x degrees. So we know that 87 and 58 and x have to equal 180. So let's create an equation. If we have 87 degrees plus 58 degrees plus x, that's going to give us 180 degrees. So now all we need to do is combine our like terms, and 87 and 58 is 145 plus x equals 180. Then we can subtract 145 from both sides of our equation. This gives us 0. So now x is equal to 45 degrees. So this angle measure is 45 degrees. Let's look at our second example. This doesn't have the labels or the angles labeled with their measures. So when this happens, I always read carefully, and I will trace this angle with my finger or my pencil. So I will angle BAC. So I'm going to trace that B to A to C. So this angle right here is 115 degrees. I'm going to label that on my paper because that's going to help me stay organized. Then angle ABC, I'm going to start here. ABC is 32 degrees. So I'm going to mark that down. This is asking us, though, what is the measure of ACD? So in order to find that, actually, there are two different ways to find this. So one way that we know is we can find the measure of this angle because these two angles are supplementary. We know these two equal 180 degrees. So we find the measure for this one, then we can find the measure for this one. So let's do that first. So if we add 115 plus 32 plus this measure, which is x, equals 180, that's going to give us 147 plus x equals 180 degrees. Now we can take away 147 from both sides, and that's going to leave us with x equals 33 degrees. So now this angle is 33 degrees. So all we need to do next is subtract 33 from 180. So 33 from 180 is 147. Well, does that number sound familiar? I hope it does, because we'd had that number right up here. We also know that this angle plus this angle plus this angle have to equal 180 degrees. So did anyone notice a shortcut? Well, if we take this angle, which is already in place, plus 115 plus 32, that should give us 180. So in order to find this measure, I'll use a different color here, of this outside angle here, all we have to do is, in a triangle, is add the opposite angles from this angle, from these two angles. So angle this 115 degrees and this 32 degrees are going to be the same measure of this outside angle because we know of this relationship, which is 180 degrees. So in this situation, all we had to do was add 115 plus 32 to get 147, which gives us the measure of this exterior angle. Okay. Now let's look at another example. Here we have a triangle, and we don't know two of the angles, but we do know that this angle is 90 degrees. So let's go ahead and put that in there. So let's create an equation to help us figure this out. We know that 90 plus x plus 14, because that's the measure of this angle, plus this measure, x, all have to equal what? Those are the three measure those triangles, or excuse me, those three angles. So we know they have to be equal to 180 degrees. So let's combine our like terms. Well, we have two x's plus 90 and 14 is going to give us 104 equals 180. So let's subtract 104 from both sides. And that is going to leave us here with 2x is equal to, take away 100, so 76. And so then we divide both sides by 2. And x is equal to half of 70 is 35, and half of 6 is 3. So that's going to give us 38 degrees. So if x is 38 degrees, that means this angle has to be 38 degrees. But that doesn't give us the angle of this measure. We know this measure has to be 14 more than that. So in order to find the measure of this angle, we have to take 38 and add it to 14, and that will give us 52 degrees. Now let's double check and make sure that our three numbers, our three measures, equal 180. Well, 52 and 38, that equals 90, and 90 and 90 equals 180. So we're good to go. Okay, so this angle is 52 degrees. So it's important that you answer the question that's being asked. Sometimes it will ask you to find x. Sometimes it will ask you to find the measure of an angle. Okay, so here's our last two examples. In this situation, we know that this outside angle is 120 degrees, and we know this inside angle right here is 60 degrees. So we want to find out this angle up here. So in order to do that, we need to figure out this angle. Well, we know that if this whole part equals 180, that 20 plus what is going to give us 180? Well, that's going to be 60. And these two equal 120, and so therefore this one also has to be equal to 60 degrees. Now, even though this doesn't look like it, because I'm not a perfect artist, this tells us that this is an equilateral triangle, that all three of these angles are the same, even though it doesn't look like it's not drawn perfectly. But remember, that's when you have to keep in mind that all these diagrams are not drawn to scale. You have to trust the numbers, not the diagram, okay? Now let's look at this one. If it tells you that these two triangles are similar, we'll say this is A, B, C, and this is X, Y, and Z. If they tell you that A, B, C triangle is congruent to triangle X, Y, Z, that means that these two angles are corresponding and have to be the same measure. These two angles are corresponding and have to be the same measure, and these two angles are corresponding and have to be the same measure. Now, we also know two other things, or one other thing. Because these side lengths are equal, this is equal to this, and this is equal to this, we know these are an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle means that two sides are the same, one is different, and when the two sides are the same, it does something important to these angles. It means that these two angles are the same measure. We know that to be true. So, if I told you that this angle was 42 degrees, we would also have to know that this angle is 42 degrees. And because this angle B is corresponding with Y, angle Y, this would also have to be 42 degrees. This is just a dilation, okay? Remember that angles don't change, just the side lengths change in a dilation. And since they're similar, we know that the angle measures have to be the same, okay? So now the question is, well, what's this angle? So in other words, we know that 42 plus 42 plus x is going to give us 180 degrees. So now we have 84 plus x is going to equal 180 degrees. We subtract, excuse me, 84 from both sides. That's going to give us x is equal to 96 degrees. And that does not look right, does it? If it was 96 degrees, this would have to be greater than a right angle. It would have to be obtuse, and that's okay. That the drawing is wrong, the numbers are right. You got to trust the numbers, okay? So that's about that. So I hope that helps you be able to get started on the assignment that you've been given today.